Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Entrepreneur Odyssey. And today I'm really pleased to be joined by John Clapper, Vyrida. Welcome to the podcast, John. Excuse
Out
me,
of
you're
been
you're
moving
you're
into yep,
part of the
yep.
group. And actually, let's start with with a little bit about your background and then how you joined Vyrida.
Yeah, so a lot of my background is interesting because I don't come from your typical technology background. I actually started as a pastor, worked that for a few years, and then through that, did a lot of detours. So I sold cars for a bit. I worked in a warehouse, unloading and loading trucks. I also then kind of went to a call center to
Okay.
hopefully pay for pharmacy school to become a pharmacist. But through that, got into the resource planning department. And that's where I first kind of touched data and it kind of everything just kind of clicked together from all my experiences before. And so from there, I learned kind of self taught with YouTube and everything else how to do data engineering and moved through a few roles that way. Kind of ran into the same problems over and over. A lot of times, businesses were trying to make critical decisions with data that weren't built for them or were built for a different purpose, and they kind of just jimmy rigged it to work for their processes as they're working through. And
Okay.
so from that point, I moved into being a consultant for a bit, and then worked through um, the different levels of leadership. I'd always tried to get away from leadership because I didn't want the responsibility, but eventually I fell into it. From there, met a good entrepreneur that has kind of helped me out working through stuff, and we saw we had an opportunity within the credit union core space to come into a company and help turn it around. And so that had a different
Okay.
name when we joined, and we moved it into Verdia, and now we're working through trying to modernize the core because a lot of times the cores are about 30 years old technology that just it doesn't really bring data up into it without charging you an arm and a leg. So finding from a credit union perspective is kind of our heart and soul of pouring into our communities. And so we bring a unique thought process into how cores should be versus how they are today.
Excellent, excellent. And I like the fact that Viridia helps credit unions reimagine their digital experience. Can you talk to us about what that means in practice?
So when we first came in, one of the factors is just the technology itself. So when we came into this space, a lot of the technology looks like it's back in 2001, even to some credit unions still using basically DOS commands to run their core and to run their financial institutions. Yeah.
Gosh. Wow.
So from there, and the thing is since there's a lot of long contracts, there's not nothing to encourage these cores to innovate, right? Because they get into lots or they get them into long contracts to where they're kinda stuck, and finding a core is also just a huge thing because that's what they run their whole entire credit union on, so even changing cores become very difficult for a credit union just because
Wow.
of the amount of time it takes and the amount of effort it takes, so sometimes it's good enough and it survives. They're also stuck with there was one core that a credit union went to and said, "Hey, I just need to add a couple columns to this report and filter it." And it became essentially like, a 30-hour project to add filters to a report, right?
God.
And so there's this paywall that they're stuck behind as well to get at their data. One of
Mhm.
the biggest problems that we came in when we were looking at the core that we were helping reinvent, essentially it was, one of their major problems was we just want to be able to get at the data. It's really hard to do that from some of these systems that are out there today.
Okay, interesting. And so how does Viridia help businesses achieve that?
So basically what we've done is we've just become very transparent with the data. We've opened up the ability to get to their data to the point to where some of the technology we have is they can go in and SQL, they know SQL and they have someone who understands it. They can go in and just pull whatever data that they're wanting to with that. The other thing
Right.
we've done is, and I always say this, like our tools are like we just kind of throw the Legos out on the ground and then we give them ways to build their instruction using AI. So being able to use natural language processes, they're able to interact with an agent to get instructions on how to build their data, and it will actually give them the SQL that they need to run to pull if they want to the point even where they don't have to necessarily know SQL to understand it, to walk through and get to the data that they need.
Interesting, interesting. And does it leverage you said it leverages AI to help?
Yes, it leverages what's called a PLM, a private language model,
Okay,
that's sequestered on their own system. So when you're talking about compliance and everything on that, it's secure and ready to roll for them.
amazing. And that, I guess, has its own security
Yep.
sort of built in.
Yep, and, the other nice thing about it is because we start with kind of this utilitarian use of AI mindset, even the new core that we are currently in process of building essentially dynamically helps a credit union employee be able to use the tool as well. So, essentially, it looks at the code and tells them what needs to be done, and also looks at their internal policies and processes, so that way it works off of if you are a teller just coming in to learn this, it takes a lot of the burden off of someone training them because it'll walk them through how to process transactions, how to work with the customer in that type of environment. So a lot of the
Amazing.
times we look at it and we say, hey, now you can, because I think one of the problems in today's world, especially for these smaller credit unions and a lot of different places, is finding those quality workers. So now you can focus on quality versus focusing on, quantity of getting people in just to do the tedious stuff because AI is really helping out getting through the tedious stuff and being able to curate things a lot quicker than what was possible before for AI, which that's the one thing I love AI for is that it takes a lot of the tedious work out and something that throughout my career I've always been, how can I do this faster and with the
Mhm.
least amount of effort on my
Right.
side because, why continue to do tedious things
Mhm.
um, if you don't
Yeah.
have to, because it's kinda no one likes doing it, and it's
Right,
just
right. And yeah, ultimately it does eliminate the potential for human error as well,
mhm,
right? By
yep.
by automating some of these repeatable processes. And then you mentioned that you reset data for growth. What's that mean for your customers? Why is that an advantage for your customers?
Giving them access to clean data and being able to present that to them allows them to make good quality business decisions. Being a consultant, I've walked into big and small businesses, they all have the same problem. They've basically allowed their users to input bad data into their systems and being able to clean that data up and have it cleaned for them. So essentially for all these credit unions, being able to have a clean data set out of their core becomes really important for them to make decisions quickly and also to allow the AI to make good quality decisions because we all know AI hallucinates. Like AI is not perfect. I always say it's built by imperfect people, so there's always going to be the ability
Mhm.
for it not to be correct, and that's not a bad thing. It just
Right.
means you work with it a little bit differently than a lot of people think they just, they input something and it just gives you the right answer right away. That it's okay that it does. It just gets you there quicker and I know there's a lot of compliance and rulings that are coming out to where, you have to have a human curate whatever the AI is saying because who are you going to blame, AI or the company? you know, you can't really.
Right, exactly. I mean, AI is a great tool, but it is a tool. It
Yeah.
still needs that human intervention, that human eye to validate what's being output. And I think that's something that not
No.
everybody understands yet. We need to be using it as a tool, not a gospel for truth, right?
Yep. It's one of those things to where it's not something you trust automatically. It's like working with a very, very smart employee who can look at
Hmm.
your data very quickly and get you an answer to it. You still need to, you know, check it and make sure that it's correct. I mean, I was working on because I still preach. I was working on a sermon for church and I was working with an AI to help me with, just tightening it up and everything because I use it like a research assistant as well. And it brought back uh, a hallucination saying that this pastor's kid had died, who was a public pastor, and it never it they didn't. And so finding out
That's a
that
pretty big
yeah,
error.
and then you
Gosh.
ask them like, "Did you make this up?" And it's like, "Yeah, I did, sorry." Like, "Here's the actual correct thing." And you
Oh,
hear of
wow.
lawyers using it, and then there's courts
Mm,
cases that weren't, that didn't exist that they try to use as precedents for their like, precedents for their actual court case, and, they
yeah.
get called out on so you always have to check AI regardless of how tuned it is, how well it's put together. It's
Mhm.
again, it was based off the human brain. It's based off of imperfect people.
Yeah.
Therefore, I it'll be really, really good, but never, perfect.
So it's still learning.
Yep.
AI, yes, it's been around in various forms for well, almost 10 years now since, OpenAI and all of that. But it's still learning, especially generative AI, right? It's still
Yes.
in its relative
And then you start going to agentic AI and, which is really cool once you start being able to play around with some of those things, but
yeah.
still not some it's always something to pay attention to and to curate, and I don't
Mm,
think that's a bad thing, and I think a lot of people, if they have that false expectation of being perfect, are really gonna get in trouble as time goes on.
absolutely. Absolutely. John, I'm going to change track a little bit. What kind of industry trends are you seeing at the moment in this space?
And I see a big one of the biggest is the idea of these smaller because cores have always tried to be a one-stop shop, and because they're so closed off and because they're so archaic, there's a lot of different fintech companies coming out to do specific things in the financial space, right? And the expectations of the users are a lot different as we're walking through. So you see different fintechs popping in, and I think what is going to set Birdie apart in that sense is the idea of being an invisible core and
Right.
being open to connecting to these fintechs that are out there. We want to offer, hey, we have these tools, but at the same time, if there's one that's going to work better for your credit union, then
Mhm.
we want to be able to open it up to be able to connect to them easily. So that way they have options to use what they want to use. And so what I see is a lot of these smaller fintechs coming up, similar to apps on the iPhone. They're basically similar to that, like where they're just different financial pieces of the puzzle when it comes to like crypto, when it comes
Mhm.
to family banking. I mean, you've seen it with, I don't know if you've heard of Greenlight before, but Greenlight is an app that you can do finances with your kids. I've used it
Oh,
with
nice.
my kids, but
Okay.
there's another app that's came out that's connected to the credit union and connected uh, to your core that you can connect to your core called Buku, Buku, yeah, which does a similar thing that Greenlight does, but it's actually attached to your bank account versus it being a separate account walking through.
Okay. Oh,
And
that's
so
fun.
so
Okay.
being a and it has a couple other things to where, hey, I can lend my kid money and have him learn how interest works and him paying me back and having payments without him have to actually go out and get loans because
Yeah.
let's face it, our parent not all parents teach their kids how to actually financially work with money. And there
Right.
hasn't been an easy way to do that other than an Excel sheet that you're working through and working through cash.
Mhm.
So to be able to do that through a bank, for them to be able to request a loan to you for you, and it's your money, so you can
Mm.
work through the interest rate and the payment, progress going through. So I think crypto is gonna be a big is growing in its popularity as a denomination, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So being able to work through that, and I really see, from that industry, just being able to have an open system for your partners that would wanna come in, and having a good partner ecosystem is something that we're hoping to move the needle on, when it comes to cores. So kinda being open to be able to work with them versus being closed off and trying to compete, because that's the whole reason why these fintechs are being very successful is because they're doing one thing very well versus trying to spread across, a group of things, and I say it's similar to Apple, right? They provided a platform for apps. Yeah, they
Yeah.
have apps, but you don't necessarily have to use them to use Apple's.
No.
That ecosystem is something that we're trying to build to hit that market going through.
Smart.
So
Very smart.
and I see a lot of people wanting to do mobile and wanting to be able to not necessarily have to go into an actual brick and mortar to do their banking, and you see that with Chime and
Mm,
some of these other apps that are out there that are banking apps that are being successful.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many of them. It's almost hard to keep track. What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced in your journey with Viridia so far, and how have you overcome them?
I think right now some of the biggest challenges is just the expectations of smaller and, mid-sized credit unions. I think technology because and we were just on a phone call talking through like these CEOs come from being school teachers, different things that aren't technology forward. So you kind of have that span of big credit unions that have, a data team, a whole technology team and everything else, but these smaller credit unions that the CEO and everyone wears so many hats in. So helping them to understand how technology works, when they hear AI, there's a term when we were talking to one where it was like, this is scary. Like it's good scary, but it's scary in the sense of it becomes a little overwhelming. And
Mm,
I think one of the challenges that we're going to be able to help and overcome is working with them to help understand how technology can actually empower them versus it taking away any jobs or that type of thing. So trying to help them understand how it can help get them like they don't have to hire 3, 4 data scientists to run through their data because now they have an AI engine that's working with them to help them understand their data and to
yeah.
walk through that, right? I think anytime you walk into a business that you're working on making better, regardless if you're a new employee, regardless if you're coming in from the top to work through, is change management. I think that's a huge thing because sometimes we as people we don't like change. And I go back, back to my scripture roots and I think about Israel leaving Egypt after slavery and the idea of like this is all new and this seems really tough. And some of them wanting to go back and be in slavery because that looked better than the freedom
Mhm.
that they have, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think the biggest thing is helping people. I always say, like, business is easy, people are hard. Helping people understand the new world, the new vision, and how it's going to help them is always very, very difficult as you're
Yeah,
walking through. And sometimes you basically have to create a compelling reason for them to want to change and help them understand why, that's important. And I
so it's really convincing perhaps your client base, really?
Client base and employees too as well, right? Like,
Mm,
as you're coming into a business that's already running and starting to change the culture is not an easy task because you have people on both sides of the spectrum, people who are really excited about the change and have wanting it and have been trying to change it, and the people who love just how things were,
yeah.
right? And so when you start changing how things were, they get scared and they wanna push back on it. Even though it may be better for them and it may be something that's good, they don't necessarily always at first see that.
That's fair, that's fair. Change is scary, as you said.
Yep,
And actually similar to that, I've heard cases where, inmates have been in prison for so long, even from youth, that they commit crimes just to go back in.
yep,
Sadly, very sadly, but it's because it's all they know. They're used to that structure.
yep.
So I think you raise a really interesting point there. And so moving track a little bit, what would you say are your growth plans for Viridia in the next sort of 6 to 12 months?
Our biggest one is just getting to the release of the new core, right? Because right now we're in that in between stage to where we still have people on the old core and we're developing the new as we're walking through. The biggest thing is to get that out, and to start hitting the mid, because right now we have a lot of small credit unions. We wanna
Okay.
be able to have a spectrum of them, right? Like, we don't wanna just target the big ones because we know that a lot of our technology is gonna help a lot of the small ones be able to grow and be able to be well, but we still don't wanna leave them out because, again, a lot of them are I mean, I've seen it in multiple, um, different different companies to where they've taken a system, right? Like called an ERP, a CRM, whatever
Yep.
system that you want to, and it's built to do the certain things really, really well. Well, what
Mhm.
happens is they go in and they say, "No, we want to customize everything." And so essentially they try, and that's why Salesforce and SAP and some of these other bigger companies are successful is because you can customize a lot of that stuff together. With the
Mhm.
core, it's a lot harder to do that. And so instead of trying to take this tech piece of technology and make it work for them specifically, we're looking at the whole and saying, "Okay, how can we build this in such a way that it's configurable to where it's helpful in the small credit unions and the big credit unions and be able to do both?" So, you
Okay.
have to make it configurable, not necessarily customizable, because you don't want 33 flavors of the same technology, right? And that's
Yeah.
what ends up happening with a lot of these, and that's why a lot of time data is hard and it's not clean, it's because, hey, I need to make this technology fit my process versus fitting your processes to your technology.
Yeah.
And so as we grow, we want to be able to hit all of these markets to be able to bring this new idea of how a core should function and how we would want a core to function if we were a credit union of any size. And I
Yeah.
think that becomes, hey, let's make it open, let's make it configurable, and then let's make sure that AI is infused in all of it, so that way it takes a lot of that tedious work out of a credit union's hands, so they can focus on actually taking care of their members. So as we grow, our plan is to grow there. The other thing is too, we do, because we come from a lot of the leadership team comes from, consulting backgrounds. We do have other tools that can work on any core, hoping to be able to give them, if they don't want to switch course, to be able to give them the power to be able to use their data, to be able to understand it, and to be able to walk through. And so we also help credit unions. We actually have one that we're working with now, move their data and to move it into a data warehouse, so that way they're able to use their data going through, walking through. So we aren't just a core company. So as we want to grow those verticals as well, to be able to help credit unions be able to use their data. So a lot of the AI tools that we've built actually can be put on top of different cores to be able to help them understand their data and walk. So
Amazing, amazing. And do you, because you mentioned that you're sort of a lot of your customers are sort of on the smaller side at the moment, and
mhm.
your aspirations are to get to those medium credit unions. What kind of tactics are you using to get to those, to reach out to those medium credit
A lot
unions?
of it has to do with our ancillary services, right? So we know that, like, the core, moving to a core is a long process, and changing those cores, but helping to build out a data warehouse, helping them to clean up their data, helping them with different parts of the credit union when it comes to, hey, we have, a loan engine that can look at look at the loans and tell you if a person is a quality borrower or not, how to walk through that with a lender. We have a bunch of ancillary services to be able to start with and then build onto, hoping that they're going to sit there and go, hey, this is really cool technology. I wonder what their core looks like and
Right.
what's available there and what that would look like. So a lot of our strategy has to do with, and obviously the marketing and working within LinkedIn and different platforms to starting those conversations. But a lot of it has to do with, hopefully we can land and kind of expand within the different credit unions, because they see how our team works, they see who we are, and they see, the quality of tools that they're getting. Our core is, you know, just as good as the other stuff that we've been building, and so just really helping on that side. So it's really, we need to create a compelling story, for whoever we're working with to come work with us and work
Nice.
through. So
You mentioned that obviously you're on a one core at the moment, and you're looking to move your clients over to a new core or to an
we are the core company. We're basically updating that core essentially and bringing it
mm,
into the, 21st century. So
see.
we're rebuilding it as we're going through, and we're using what's called a strangler pattern. It sounds really bad, but it comes from the fact that, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's a fig tree that grows, within another tree, and it's called the
Yeah,
strangler fig.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so we're slowly strangling out the old and building the new on top of that. So, and bringing it to make it cloud native and, again, out of the 20th century and into at least the 21st.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
And I
Nice.
think some of the other things too is because we want to earn, we're changing how contracts work as well. So we're not trying to get people into long contracts. We're doing a year contract to be able to have to earn their business every year,
Mm,
right? Like, we want to earn people's business. We don't want to get them trapped into a long contract. So just kind of changing some of the paradigms that are in there, hoping that that will help credit unions want to move to our core, because it's a good core and they're not stuck in it or trapped, which I feel like a lot of credit unions feel that way right now, because
right.
they're stuck with, these long contracts and deconversion fees and everything else. So
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
trying to open that up and bring it into, hey, like,
Hmm.
we wanna help you succeed, and we wanna earn your business as we're walking.
Great,
So,
great. Well, I like your motto, and I like the fact that you're trying to be upfront with your customers, and you don't want to, like, say, I mean, I don't like the word trap, but you don't
yeah.
want bind your customers to a really long contract if it's not the right thing for them. Is there one last words of wisdom you would like to leave on today's podcast for entrepreneurs that are just starting out?
I think for people who are just starting out, don't be afraid and be flexible. I know from my life looking at it, like thinking about when I was, from 16 saying I was going to be a youth pastor for the rest of my life to changing and going a bunch of different directions. I think the biggest thing, and I heard this before, and it was funny because my life kind of matched it, is try everything in your 20s, learn what you're good at in your 30s, make money in your 40s, and then enjoy kind of the rest of your life. And so I think what happens is a lot of people feel like this is exactly what I have to do and this is the only thing I can do. Go You're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna fail, be okay with that, and just learn from your failure and then move forward. Like, just keep, good old Rocky quote, "Just keep moving forward," because that's how winning is done, and some things are gonna hit, and it's gonna be great, and some things aren't, and if you learn from it, it wasn't a failure in the first place. So, I
Yeah.
think it's really just being flexible and being able to walk through life and being able to change what you can change and not worrying about what you.
Um, failure is not a bad thing if you learn from it, for sure. Well, listen, thank you so much, John, for your time today. We've really enjoyed having you on the podcast, and hope to invite you back maybe later on in the year again.
Awesome. Thank you. It was great. It was great being on here, and thank you.
Thank you so much.